Hello, and a very warm welcome to episode 303 of the Total Saints podcast, your home for all things Southampton Football Club. A huge thank you, as always, to our TSP Patreon community, because we couldn't make the show each week without your support. And a big welcome to Adam Baker, who's joined our Bobby Stokes tier this week. Welcome along, Adam. Going to be live streaming this episode as ever to our Facebook, our X, our Twitch, our Instagram, and our YouTube. So if you're watching live, make sure you get involved. And coming up this week on the podcast, just when you thought it couldn't get much worse, we've got another 5-0 defeat to discuss. This time, though, it's Brentford. It is a break from the league this weekend as Swansea visit St Mary's in the FA Cup third round. So we will preview that game as well. My name's Martin Starke, and I'm joined this week by Steve Grant, who's the owner of Saints Web. Alfie House is senior Southampton reporter at the Daily Echo, and Glen Cour is writer of the blog League One -10. So the first game of 2025 started in another heavy defeat against a team who hadn't won away all season. 5-0 the final score, although it was only 3-0 when I left, so I'm kind of sticking to that. I just don't know where to start. Again, this week, it feels to me like kind of Groundhog Day, Glenn. Like you can change the name of the opposition each week, but the results, the talking points are still the same. I kind of feel like maybe we should just talk about the darts or traitors or New Year or something. It's just, we're going to end up going over the same old things, aren't we? It was terrible.
Yeah, but it's a different strain of smelly brown stuff, isn't it? You know,
Different strain of terrible.
Where do we start with that? Well, Brentford were better in every single facet that makes up a successful or relatively competent football team. They were just better than us. Not a single one of our outfield players would get in their side. Not a single one. Most of them wouldn't even get in the squad. Yesterday, as soon as I saw the team sheet and saw I just assumed he was going to play the same formation. There's only two midfielders. So whether you dress up the formation 3-4-3 or 3-5-2, whatever it is, there are only sort of like two real midfielders in there, and one of them's Joe Aribo. So I thought, well, we're going to get overrun there. That's going to be horrible. And then you see names like James Bree, Sulemana, and just think, oh my God, here we go. Just I kind of went in with a deep sense of foreboding right from the start. And then bizarrely, it just seemed like we were playing man to man all over the pitch. And within about 5 minutes, I was thinking, oh, this will be interesting because there's no way we'll be able to keep this up for 90 minutes because we're just not fit enough. Brentford are all sort of like big, fit Scandinavian players. And there's no way we're going to be able to keep up with that. And, 1-0 down after 5 minutes. The central midfield Aribo was a dreadful touch, lost the ball. Ugachukwu had to leave his man to go and try and retrieve it. Did half and half, didn't really do anything. One pass, James Bree not concentrating, probably 1-0. First half, I think we had the bizarre rest of the first half where we were kind of letting the goalkeeper have the ball and just stand there with it for 15 seconds or 20 seconds or whatever it was. And Sulemana and Amo-Ameyaw were frightened to go and press him.
It was weird, though, wasn't it? Because when they did, that's what they wanted. But you were kind of willing them to do something. I think it was a desperation.
And then what happened was that Flecken managed to pass the ball from the edge of the penalty area right the way through the entire team up to the centre forward. I mean, it's just a joke, really. And then once Visser or Mbomo got hold of it, then we were in real trouble. So that wasn't great, but we got to half an hour, and for the last sort of quarter of an hour of the first half, we actually sort of stepped up the pace a little bit and, at least looked semi-competent. 2 subs at half time. First 5 minutes of the second half wasn't bad. We major positive of the day, we got a VAR decision in our favour that could have been given the other way. That was good. So it's 8-2 for the season. I make it. And we used that let off to eventually let in a second goal from a Harwood-Bellis mistake. Really not heading it, trying to bring it down, and instead of just heading the damn thing away. And then Bomo scored a 2-0, and then we gave up, and it was pathetic. And the second half. Well, I don't know what's the worst half of the season, either the second half yesterday or the first half against Spurs. It's pretty close. Just gave up. No one really lifted a leg in the last sort of 20 minutes. No one really tried. They brought subs on, didn't do anything. The only player I'd really the two players I'd kind of excuse. One's Aaron Ramsdale, who I thought did everything that he could, bearing in mind Brentford were having shots at him from 5 yards a lot of the time, and he was beating them away, trying to keep the score down. So he did all right. And too little, too late. I thought Tyler Diblin tried as well. He's trying to make something happen. He's got no support. Same as Ramsdale, really. There's no support from any of the players. We're expecting an 18-year-old to beat 7 men and score, whilst Cameron Archer sort of stands in the centre forward position and watches on, doesn't bother to go to support him. Adam Armstrong doing the same, hiding out on the left wing. It's just garbage. It's just.
I saw you make that point online yesterday. People saying that he was hanging onto the ball too long, and
he does
criticize him, and he does do that. But
he undoubtedly does hang on to the ball too long, and he needs to learn when to release it. He's an 18-year-old kid. If you think Tyler Diblin's the problem, you ain't looking. We're going to get on to
someone to pass it to, isn't he?
That's my point. That's my point. No one. They see him hang on to the ball. He started to throw his arms around now. I've noticed that, which is not a trait you want to see. But you can see he's going, well, who the hell can I pass to? And I know people can notice that he doesn't get his head up sometimes, and he does hold on to it too long. But it's only occasionally where I look and think, yeah, he could have passed that to someone and he didn't. Most of the time, there's just people are too bloody lazy to get up there and support him. You could go through all the players individually. Some are just not good enough. Some look like they can't be bothered, or they certainly did yesterday. And it was just pathetic. And this is before West Ham is looking like a real forestall, isn't it? Even though we lost that game, we actually put in a half decent performance, but West Ham have been battered 5-4 in the 2 games since. So that shows how bad they are, even though they were playing Liverpool and Man City. And we lost that one. And I think this is where we're at. And I'm seeing things from the manager that I just think this is Nathan Jones part 2. And it's a little bit,
but without the God complex.
Yeah, it's a little. There are elements of Russell Martin about this as well, in that he wants to play a certain way. He doesn't have the players to do it, but he's going to carry on doing it regardless. It's a bit of a worrying thing that we've got. 18 games left to sit through this stuff, and the way things are shaping up at the moment, I'm beginning to wonder if Mr. Jurek is even going to make it to the end of the season. But
this is exactly what we discussed then, isn't it? For 4 weeks in the build-up to Russell Martin being sacked, we all said multiple times, if you bring in a manager now, it's going to be very difficult to last until May because the players aren't very good, and he's finding that out.
Yeah.
What was your take on the thing on the game yesterday, Alfie? I mean, it was a poor start, wasn't it? But to me, we just looked beaten from kickoff.
Yeah, I mean, I think Glen has summed it up brilliantly and summed up the mood of the players and everything. You say go 5 minutes into the game, go 1-0 down from an absolute calamity, about 3 different errors that just set the tone. And then I thought the actual, let's stitch together sort of 10 or 15 minutes from every game this season. You could probably put together a 90-minute performance somewhere because they were decent for 15 minutes for the half time. But then after that, it wasn't again. And I mean, the level of capitulation late in the second half, I know that, one's a penalty and whatnot, but to concede 2 goals like that when, the whole idea of bringing Juric in has, to be more solid and to stop shipping goals. And, that's 5 goals they've conceded now in the last 3 of the last 4 home games. And Glenn made the point about Ramsdale, the amount of shots he faced. Brentford had 12 shots from inside the Saints box in the second half. And I think about 5 of them were from inside the 6-yard box. So it's just a free rein to go absolutely ham on it. And, Glenn mentioned the subs. I don't really remember any of them doing anything at all. To be honest with you, made 4 of them by 55 minutes, and I don't remember anything.
Well, Sugawara got an assist.
Yeah. So I just wonder. I think we know how bad the squad is now, and I think we have a long sort of few months ahead of us. And I do worry about it. And Man United got a result today, and they're going to absolutely smash us, I think.
Do we know if Nathan Wood was injured? Because he went off at half time.
No, I think it was just tactical. I don't think there was anything to
So I
that.
thought,
I'm not wrong.
like, we're 1-0 down at half time. Technically, we've had the best 15 minutes that we played just before half time. We're kind of still in it. And you think, well, maybe a couple of changes. And we changed 2 defenders. And that kind of comes back to what you were saying, I guess, Glenn. Steve, what did you make about it all yesterday? About the sorry mess?
Yeah, just crap from start to finish, really, wasn't it? It was. We've not really had that many. I mean, you look back at a lot of the games and you can, as Alfie said, you can pick out 15, 20-minute spells where we've kind of done something. And actually yesterday, I mean, I think you're still being quite generous in terms of that 15-minute spell before the break, because
we had the ball, we just didn't know what to do with it. Didn't we?
Yeah, and Flecken has, I don't think he's got his knees dirty. He wouldn't have needed a shower after the game. He's been that sort of underworked as a goalkeeper. Like one shot on target, I think, in the first half, which he could have thrown his cap on. And I mean, it was interesting that, like, everyone kind of highlighted the West Ham game and sort of said, "Oh, this is different. Look how we can create chances against mid-table opposition if we play this way." And I mean, we're now 3 games in, and that's already gone out the window. I think we put one good quality ball into the box, and that's from Nathan Wood, who frankly shouldn't be in a position to be crossing the ball.
Dibben had the best chance of the game towards the end of the half when Joe Rebo pulled it back from the touchline. And then he hit it just past the That was
post.
a good chance and a good effort, to be fair. It could have been a leveller, but there was also, I mean, it took 26 minutes to have a shot, and the effort that Kamaldeen Sulemana produced.
Well, I mean, nearly at the corner flag, didn't it?
It was hilarious. From where I was sat, I thought it did hit the corner flag, but actually it did.
But one thing.
He looks like a 9-year-old boy who's been allowed to play with the grown-ups. It's just what he doesn't look like. He knows anything.
I mean,
about what he's doing.
That 15-minute spell before half time was probably the only time where he looked like he was actually happy to get involved and kind of wanted to run at people and do something. It's like, this is what we signed you for like 3 years ago, mate. It's 2 years ago, sorry. And it's just bizarre that it's kind of only just clicked, and then obviously halftime whistle comes and it all vanishes again. But it's one thing that Sulemana shot about halfway through the first half kind of illustrated is the sarcasm from our fans.
Well, he didn't want to shoot, did he? I got the impression that he didn't want to shoot. He was looking for another pass, and then everyone shouted shoot, and he did. And he was like, "Well, see."
Yeah, I mean, none of them want to shoot. None of them want to take responsibility for anything. And that's, unfortunately, I mean, this is a topic I'm sure we'll come on to later, but that is endemic of a lack of accountability and a lack of responsibility being taken from the very top of the club all the way down. That's not just the players, but it's something that filters down, and it's basically infected the first team. And it was like that 2 years ago. It was like that in parts last season. Those two little bad runs we had all bore the same hallmarks of basically players just tossing it off at the point where things got a little bit difficult for them. And something's got to change. And it's not just the players. The players, yeah, sure, at this level they're not good enough as a collective. But I reckon you take 6, 7, 8 of our what you would probably class as our first choice 11, and you say to Premier League clubs, here, they're all available. I reckon a lot of those get into teams, even if they're bottom end of the Premier League, they'll get into teams and they'll fit into a system and they'll look all right. But you lump them all together, and frankly, unfortunately, I mean, as we've seen, that as a collective, they're not good enough, and we don't have the depth to sustain injuries or suspensions when those key players are unavailable. But it's such a mental thing, that this disintegration now, that it happens so often. It can't just be that, they're not good enough, because teams that aren't good enough still find a way of shutting up shop at 2-0 or even 3-0 in the case of yesterday. Okay, yeah, you've got 15 minutes to go. It's 3-0. Fine. Just shut the game down. Just don't do anything stupid. But of course, clown car in our defence, and Harwood-Bellis seemed to get his foot stuck in the turf when he was trying to stretch for the pass into Lewis Potter for the fourth. He and Sugawara getting an almighty mess, and you're kind of quite lucky that one of them hasn't given the other one a concussion with the way they were about to run into each other.
The penalty nonsense as well.
Well, yeah, and you give away a penalty like that, and you think, well, okay, we've had some fairly harsh penalties given against us, and other decisions go not in our favour this season, and yet you go and do something like that where actually the guy's probably not going to get the ball, the cross is probably overhit, as it turns out, and yet you've decided, nah, sod this, I'm just going to yank him down in full view of everybody. Just madness. And I mean, that's sort of Ugachukwu had kind of got himself back into favour with people with his cameo against Fulham and looking pretty useful against West Ham. And yeah, yesterday was a reversion back to the waste of space, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think one of the worries for me is like Derby. Well, everyone talks about Derby, right? And I still don't think they're going to be worse than that. I just don't, because it's football, it's 11v11. You're going to win a game at some point. But they had 7 points at this stage, and the reason they ended up on 11 is because they, surely a point comes when they know that they're relegated. Like, obviously everybody knows they're relegated, but surely when the players then become infected with that mind virus that, okay, we actually are crap and we actually are going to lose every game, then how do you recover from that? How do you come back from that? And if you keep getting beat by 5, that's going to come a lot quicker, and there's still a lot left this season. So I do just worry about not necessarily even the effort or the attitude of the players, but just even the mentality and the belief, and just are they going to be completely drained by mid-February, at which point we've still got 15 games, whatever, to get through, and they've got nothing in them. That worries me a little bit.
Half of them don't look like they care anyway, so how can they get even worse?
Well, even Thomas Frank acknowledged it, didn't he? That they kind of given up and taken their foot off the gas. In his interview afterwards, he was like, "Yeah, that's a fair comment. They probably just chucked it in."
Which is worrying.
Well, yeah, when the opposition manager isn't afraid to say that, you know that that you're in a bit of a hole there.
Managers tend to stick together, so he was probably sticking up for Uric in a way, just to almost to say, well, what can he do if his team give up? It's the old managers' union sort of thing. And if that's the case, I largely agree with him. But I don't think Uric is completely blameless for yesterday.
No, of course not. No, but he has come into a group which obviously there isn't really a clear way that they can do it. I don't think there is a way they can do it. But yeah, you're right. I mean, picking teams with Kamaldeen Sulemana and Paul Amo-Ameyaw up front in 2025, it's not going to work, is it? And everyone can see it. And like say, midfield of Ugachukwu and Aribo. I mean, that's never going to work in a million years.
No.
I don't know if anyone else noticed with the foul and the one that got ruled out. It was only really Bednarek that was complaining to the ref,
because he was the one that was fouled, wasn't he?
Well, I know technically, he has to because he's the captain and stuff. But everybody else just kind of like shrugged their shoulders, walked back to the halfway line, looking at each other, blaming each other. And I thought I didn't see it myself. And then lo and behold, we get a VAR decision go our way for a change. But I just thought it was telling that he was the only one that actually looked like he was the last at that point in the game. So
yeah,
I mean, we're starting to think, Glenn, that maybe it wasn't Russell Martin's fault. And I think you were saying earlier before we started, just that it feels like the blame was all on him, and now he's gone. We're starting to look at
Russell. I mean, I think Russell Martin had to go. We've done that one already, to death. I think he had to go. He obviously wasn't solely the problem, but he didn't help things.
Well, he was a problem, wasn't he? And he's the easiest one to replace.
He was a problem, and he just arrogantly believed that this would work, and it just was never going to with the players that he had. So I think he had to go, but he was a lightning rod for the criticism. Everyone who wanted to criticise Saints and all the, I talked about the us being the laughing stock. All the media were talking about was Russell Martin's style of play, playing out from the back, giving away 12 goals or whatever. So it was all Russell Martin this, Russell Martin that, style of play this, that. And now he's gone. And that leaves Sport Republic exposed with their asses in the air, basically, because there's people aren't going to absolutely hammer a new manager who's come in. People are now beginning to turn around and go, okay, this is rotten. And as Steve said, this is rotten from the top of the club down. And suddenly they're going to get criticism. And people like, the chairman, Phil Parsons, who's sort of vaguely visible, he's going to start getting it. The pressure is going to turn up on Sport Republic. I'm very interested in Dragan Solak's viewpoint, because if I was him, I'd be there thinking, okay, this lot got us relegated last time, Sport Republic, all acknowledged, water under the bridge. We had a chance in the Championship to come back. We've come back. I wouldn't be expecting the same shit again. If I'm the money man and I'm seeing the value of my asset, gradually go down. So, but I don't even know how it really works, because Sport Republic own the club. So how does that fit in? Dragan Solak's an investor, and obviously he's on the board.
But he can't fire Henrik Kraft or Ankerson,
well,
that's
my point. Can he for underperformance? I don't know.
Well, but what they can do, Glenn, at the very least, if nothing else, is what they did last season, and that's bring in somebody with a significant football experience to oversee the club. And they recognised that after relegation, that Rasmus Ankerson, obviously, who self-professed had picked Nathan Jones and then took the January window, they recognised that what he did didn't work, and they brought somebody else in. They moved him to Gustepe, where he's done an amazing job, by the way. And Jason Wilcox, although he only was here for 9 months, whatever people say about him, he helped engineer a season in which the club were successful, and it wasn't as easy as everyone thinks it was.
There was at least confidence that someone there knew what they were doing. And I mean, if you look at the players we've signed this summer, Downs and Harwood-Bellis, yes, they've struggled, but they were sort of from the Jason Wilcox time, and everything that's happened since. So I mean, if Wilcox was, that important to the strategy when we got relegated, why didn't they replace him? Why is there not someone in that role now? Who made the decision to appoint Ivan Juric? Was he just next on the list after? From 2 years ago.
Yeah, look, if he was, one of the top targets 2 years ago, in which it was Rasmus Ankerson's ideas, then presumably it's Sport Public ideas again, and it's the.
But we heard all this stuff about we're going to try and emulate Manchester City. That's why we've got Jason Wilcox. That's why we've got Russell Martin to sort of like play this particular way. There's no way Jason Wilcox would have appointed this guy. No way. So, don't we deserve some sort of statement from someone who's making these decisions to say, this is why we did this? Because I haven't heard anything from Ankerson or Kraft or anyone since this. I don't know if you have, Alfie. I'm sure you've asked, but
we've asked.
What is going on with these guys? I mean, we've got a head of recruitment, Darren Mowbray, who we are led to believe led the summer recruitment with Russell Martin, but he doesn't sit on the board. He's not listed on the leadership board or the executive board on the club website. So how much power does he actually have?
Who does he actually report to? Does he report to the first team manager, or does he report to someone at director level? There's no, as you say, there's no structure there that makes it immediately obvious where the lines get drawn. And as a result, you get these power vacuums where someone kind of assumes responsibility, but nobody's really got the expertise for the roles that they're trying to pick up. It's like, well, how have we decided that it's not worth our while to appoint somebody into that role? Wilcox was obviously important at the time, and 9 months later, suddenly he's not important when we're just about to get promoted.
Yeah,
and
well, I think
your recruitment's going to be very, very important when you take that step up, because you need to get it right. If you don't get it right, you end up in a horrible mess like we have.
Yeah, the justification obviously is that the sort of foundations were already in place by Jason Wilcox, in that he'd appointed a head of recruitment, Darren Mowbray, he'd appointed an academy chief, Andy Goldie, and anybody else you could think of. His manager, Russell Martin, was still in situ. and everything was working swimmingly. So they felt that with Mark Bitcon coming over and picking up some of the responsibilities and being officially named Director of Football Operations, by the way, in June. So he is the Director of Football Operations of Southampton Football Club. They felt they could go without him, but clearly, given how the first 16 games went and now the shit that's left, I suppose, and the things that they need to correct and do, they need somebody.
But I'm sure Mark Bitcon is very good at what he does. I don't know the guy. I wouldn't recognise him if I tripped over him in the street, to be honest. His background is sort of like performance type stuff, psychology, fitness, things like that, because he was the guy who came from the rugby background. Is that right?
Yeah,
so,
rugby, as well as Man City Academy.
So that's nothing to do with putting a functioning Premier League team on a pitch, is it?
No.
And Phil Parsons is the commercial side of things, and I think we can all acknowledge that side of things is going well. We've talked for years about needing to up the commercial performance of the club so you can spend more money on recruiting players and whatnot. And ultimately, it doesn't matter how much money you've got if you're going to recruit like we do. So there is a vacuum there. If you look on the club website at the leadership board, you've got the likes of Solak, Ankerson, Kraft, people like that. Executive board, you've got a few other people. The only person who's ever really set foot on a football pitch is Marianne Spacey-Cale, who is obviously nothing to do with the men's side of the club. There's no one there who's either played the game or, as I say, knows what it takes to put a functioning Premier League team on the pitch. We went into this season. Russell Martin had never managed in the Premier League before. There was this recruitment guy, but who does he report to, as Steve said? So it's another shambles. And I would love to be a fly on the wall in the next board meeting when Dragan Solak is there with the guys who are making these decisions.
Well, it's Tuesday, isn't it? That's what was like the thing I was picking up on this week was they were going to get together on Tuesday to talk about transfers. I mean, no rush, lads. It's not like
that for me. I don't get that. He said that twice now.
Transfer window's only been open a week already.
I was really hoping that was just kind of like lost in translation, and maybe I took that with a pinch of salt. And then he repeated it again at the weekend and went, "Oh yeah, we're going to have a meeting on Tuesday about it." What?
That to me, I don't quite understand that. That can't be right. I mean, he said it to me clear as day. I asked him, have you had any more thoughts or ideas about the January transfer? And he said, no, we're meeting on Tuesday, but I can't get my head around that at all.
Absolute nonsense. I mean, you've written today, Alfie, haven't you? 3 years of Sport Republic. I mean, I would sum it up as a bit of a disaster. But it's a good read, and there's been some plaudits like last season. You can't argue with that. But by and large, it's been terrible, and they've been woefully inadequate.
Ultimately, they did really well last season, and Glen mentioned commercial side of the club is continuing to grow and improve, and that is important. But ultimately, they've been tested twice at the top level. And on both occasions, they failed miraculously. And it's not entirely their fault, but like Glenn and Steve have said, the buck has to stop with somebody. And, I think we all came into this season knowing it was going to be difficult. I think probably if you did hands up between 100 people, I doubt very many at all would have said that they were going to survive this season. But 6 points from 20 matches is just not acceptable. That's too far off the pace. We've spoken about how Ipswich have had the freedom to spend a little bit more, but their squad's not loads better, and they're fighting. Leicester have got more points than us. So. Yeah, it's there's no excuses to be this far off the pace. I think that they need to have another big rebuild.
We thought we would at least lay a glove on it. I think that's the problem, isn't it? Now we're looking at beating Derby's records, how many points Sheffield United were on, when was the earliest the team's ever been relegated from the Premier League. It's just absolute nonsense. Couple of other bits from the game. I've kind of made a list of things that have annoyed me this week, starting with Sulemana and Amo-Ameyaw. I think we covered players giving up as well. Thomas Frank acknowledging that. The Adam Armstrong video from Hospitality as well.
Oh, good God. Jesus Christ.
I've been sent that so many times today by Liverpool fans, Wolves fans, people I used to work with. Just when you think it can't get any more embarrassing, you've got a player going into Hospitality having to hand over a shirt to somebody that's correctly predicted the 5-0 defeat. I mean, first of all, fair play, because we always get the predictions wrong, but it's so embarrassing, isn't it? And how that situation ever manifested itself and was allowed to happen, we're an absolute laughingstock again.
Yeah, I mean it's the best bit of control by Adam Armstrong all season. to not bump someone or tell someone to piss off, because I would have done.
Yeah, definitely.
Fair play
But
to
it's I mean, there's definitely a question to be asked as to who in the club is. I mean, I don't think it's like a contractual term within that hospitality lounge that they will always supply a first team player who's played in that game. So I think the Chelsea game, I believe Jason Dodd was kind of hauled up there to say a few words post match, but obviously that was a midweek game, so that's a little bit more leeway, I think, on the club. But yeah, I mean, for them to have thrown Armstrong into that situation is ridiculous in the first place. I mean, who else you throw in there, I don't know, but I mean,
well, I think also, Steve, like if you're throwing Adam Armstrong in there to answer a couple of questions in front of the fans is fine. He's not going to enjoy it, but like to answer a couple of questions is fine. You don't need to have the bit where he hands the shirt to the woman who's predicted the 5-0 defeat. That's the bit that you could probably have left off.
Yeah, and obviously we come to the source of that video as well.
And a former employee.
Yeah, former club employee whose job at the club was player liaison officer. Now, I would have thought that one of the key facets that he would have got through to all of the players that he dealt with, whether that's first teamers or players in the academy, because I'm sure he dealt with those as well. One of the lessons that he would have sort of imparted to these players would have been to be very, very careful what you put on social media, because no matter how you think your post is going to be taken by people, there will always be someone who will be able to read it a different way. So when you're about to post that video and put some sort of jokey comment alongside, actually just have a little think back and consider how somebody else in a different position, someone who's a bit angry, someone who's fed up with the situation at the club might take that post. And then maybe don't click post. I would have thought that would be a lesson that he would have given to a lot of players over the years, and yet he's, I mean, very much do as I say, not as I do territory there, unfortunately. And I mean, he put out a clarification post this morning, but it's, I mean, he shouldn't be getting sort of abuse or threats off the back of it. But come on, just have a bit of a think and a bit of common sense. It's not difficult, especially when, as you say, the knowledge that he's got and the experience that he's got in the roles that he's performed within the game. You just think it's just unnecessary.
Was it more the source of the clip, Glenn, for you, or was it just the fact that it goes on?
No, I largely agree with what Steve said there. Well, no, I totally agree with what Steve said there. I think that's the sort of crux of the issue. He should have known better. I just think that basically, as a former employee of the club, he was probably at the game as a guest. You know, so he's probably there by the grace and favour of someone who's connected with Southampton, and
or Brentford, because he worked for them too.
Oh yeah, possibly. But to put that up there, I just didn't think it painted it just didn't make anyone look good. Not him, not his poor mum, who's at the centre of things, and you know, so it didn't make her look good. It didn't make him look good, and it didn't make the club look good. The only person who came out of it well was Adam Armstrong, simply because he didn't thump anyone.
Yeah.
And it's just, I just thought it was completely unnecessary. Now, you know, I've been. All I said was on Twitter by response. All I said was a bit disappointed. You feel you had to post this, and people have accused us of having not having a sense of humour. Oh, lighten up, fella, and all this. Usually fans of other clubs or dickheads that I don't really care about. And you know, it's just, I just thought it was unnecessary. It's just one of those things that's happened. I haven't seen his apology or whatever it was, his clarification, but yeah, there you go. It's one of those episodes that adds to the thing of us being a laughing stock, which is, you know, it's the whole club. And then there you go.
It's not going to go down well tomorrow morning, is it, Alfie? To be honest, when they're looking at that, I don't know what the answer is. Do you just stick with ex-players to do that kind of stuff?
No, I don't think it needs to a massive revamp of everything. I said I don't really know what I can say about it. I don't know who organised it or what, but I'm happy for players to go up there and talk after a 5-0 defeat, because at the end of the day they talk to us and they should be able to talk to fans as well. So
send the whole team up is the other option.
Yeah. You don't need to hide players because they perform badly, but just it's just one of those where it's it probably says on the script, right, player does 5 minutes chat, player hands prize to winner, and you just think, look at that script, get rid of the prize to win a bit and move on. There's no complaints. But actually, when you look at the video, you can see the very last second, Adam Armstrong actually stops and does a photo or signs a shirt or something for some little kid, and you just think, fair play to him. I mean,
that's what
he is a good chap, and that's why you should have the players come in so they can meet the lad, meet the kids, sign stuff and stuff. There's nothing wrong with that, but just be a bit more sensible and look after them a little bit, I suppose.
It is that fine line as well. I think we talked about it before with the hospitality and trying to get as much money in as you can. And if you're promising first team players coming up, you can probably charge a little bit more for it. And it's just unfortunate when you get hammered at home. Is there anything else on Brentford before we move on to the FA Cup?
Well,
anything else?
One thing that I thought about, I said last time we played Brentford when we got beat 3 or whatever it was, 3-0. I think I said, it seems like Thomas Frank's just got Southampton's number. And there was a comment after the video that was like, he hasn't got a number, we've just got an idiot in charge, you're an idiot, and all this sort of stuff. But I've just looked, it's now 16-1 to Brentford after the last 5 matches. So, I mean, that is... And considering we've got Rasmus Ankerson, I suppose, at the helm, who sort of helped build that, and that's very much the model for clubs, isn't it? Really, for middle-sized clubs.
Inside knowledge has served us so well.
Yeah. But in terms of Brentford are an example of how you can come into the Championship and you can actually moneyball it up, and they look so much better than Saints in every way. They've got so much more aggression, quality, just so much better.
One thing that struck me with our system yesterday and what appeared to be our strategy was that literally every single outfield player was being man-marked at pretty much all times where we could at least stay near them. I mean, obviously that didn't last very long because as soon as they started moving, we failed to keep up with them at any stage. But it was bizarre. Like for an hour, you had Tyler Dibbling basically just running around after Jensen in the centre of the park, just basically because he'd been told you got to stick to the number 8. That was exactly what he did, and that was why he was completely ineffective for best part of an hour. Second half, finally decided, we'll throw that out the window a little bit. You can actually start playing some football now. All of a sudden, 2 or 3 good runs through the middle, get a little bit of excitement going. Up until they went 3-0 up, and obviously at that point the game's gone. But I don't understand why, given that one of Brentford's key strengths is their ability 1-against-1. All over the pitch, they're really good in these individual duels, and you've got to be quite selective in terms of where you balance the various overloads and things like that in order to stop them. And yet we've decided that we're not going to overload them in any part. We're literally going to go 1v1 and say, "Go on, beat us." And so they did, time and time again. Just the ease with which Amos-Ameyaw, Visser, Sharda, Damsgaard got space in difficult areas in the final third, and got out of those spaces with ease was just embarrassing. You would expect any a League One side going to League One, League Two side going to play Brentford in an FA Cup game where you look at them and you study them and you think, right, how are we gonna defend this? And then we'll obviously then look at seeing how we can hurt them going the other way afterwards. But you would basically shut down the space, whereas we decided the complete opposite was the best way to do, and just let them have the freedom of the centre circle. It was batshit mental, and it's madness.
Yeah, Damsgaard, what a good player he is. I mean, he didn't play for Brentford for a while because Thomas Frank didn't like his work off the ball. Just so he had to sort of get him up to speed with how Brentford play when they didn't have the ball. But I thought he was a tremendous player. And once our 2 clowns in the centre of midfield lost track of him, that was when all the fun started in the second half. I would like to say, one more thing. I felt really sorry for Charlie Taylor. He hasn't played for ages, and they bring him on at half time. He's playing a vaguely unfamiliar position, left centre back, and they tell him to go man for man with Brian and Burmo. And Brian and Burmo obviously took one look at him and just went, okay, well, I'm going to stand in the centre of midfield and see what he does. And you could see Charlie Taylor looking around, trying to pass him on to someone else, and it was just shocking. And Burmo was just like, well, I'll just have the ball and do what I want. And it was just horrible. And this all adds to the I'm really wondering about this manager straight away.
Well, there was a couple of quotes I liked from him in the post match. I know this is not important, but some of the things he said were quite funny. In that he said, "Well, I was hoping for some progress today, but it felt like a kick in the head." Which was obviously someone's grasp of English is not quite perfect.
Great headline. Yeah.
It produces some funny stuff. I mean, he said that everybody's frustrated. I'm frustrated. My players are frustrated. My wife is frustrated. I just think these are good things. But he also said one thing I did like actually. He said so he was asked about Cameron Archer, and is Cameron Archer annoyed that he's not playing? And he did say, well, basically, how can anybody be annoyed they're not playing? The only thing you think about is the club. And I appreciate it's easy to say easy things like that, but it is the right sort of thing to be saying in response to that, I think. But yeah, I agree with the tactic points.
Well, I mean, actually, you want players to be annoyed that they're not playing. If players didn't give a toss that they were sat on the bench, those are the ones you don't want around.
But I think the point is that everybody's been so bad that you can't really stake a claim. I think that's kind of the point.
I'm tempted to cancel the Player of the Week vote. I mean, Fernandes won his third of the season, and I was going to say he won't win this week.
Fernandes' stake has gone up again, hasn't it? This week?
And there isn't really anybody, is there, that kind of stands out at all, unless anyone wants to.
Well, I'd say Aaron Ramsdale, and if I was him, I'd be thinking of breaking another finger so I don't have to play beyond that shit show. To be honest,
see if he can get out. Maybe Tyler Dibbling.
Nah, sort of Ramsdale.
Just Ramsdale.
Yeah. It's just Ramsdale.
Really. Done and dusted. Okay, fine. Well, it's the FA Cup. It's a break from the league. It's the FA Cup third round this weekend. Swansea, Sunday afternoon. It's being shown live on BBC Wales. I think it's a 4:30 kickoff. I was going to suggest, Steve, that we play our strongest 11, but I don't know that we have one. Up until the weekend, I kind of in my head I was thinking, well, this is the only competition that we are still in with a chance of actually doing anything in, so therefore we shouldn't rest anybody and we should go all out. But even that I don't think is going to be enough.
I mean, ultimately you need to kind of foster something going into the next run of league games. So yeah, I think Swansea at home, where, I mean, let's put this in very blunt terms. They lost 4-0 at Fratton Park last week.
Yeah.
So that's the sort of comparison we're dealing with against these lot. Obviously, cup game, very different scenario. Ground's going to be barely a third full, I suspect, because of the absolute nonsense ticketing policy.
What are they charging for it, by the way? I've not even looked.
So season ticket holders, if you got in at in that sort of early window, it was £20 plus the £1.50 tax that they still put on these things, even though it's a digital ticket.
Yeah.
So yeah, £21.50, and now I think it's £22.50 plus the booking fees.
Right.
It's like, well, you're not even trying to fill the ground here. Yeah, I mean that game should have been a tenner a ticket. Get the ground full, get the kids in, kids for £1 or whatever, and make it vaguely interesting for people. But no, they've obviously done some research and decided that there's 8,000 to 10,000 mugs who will pay whatever the hell they charge for any given game. So we'll charge them £20. Swansea aren't going to bring anybody, so in terms of away end, there's no particular issue of overfilling that or anything. So yeah, we'll charge £20, and if only 10,000 people pay it, then all that is just a smaller cut that we've got to send to Swansea at the end of it.
Less stewards as well, yeah.
That's ridiculous. Yeah, and I don't blame anybody who decides, no, can't be asked for that, thanks.
Yeah. Is this a good kind of gauge of where we are? Do you think, Glenn? I'm talking, mid-table championship club, because we've said on here, haven't we? Like, we'll have a half decent team in the championship. Well, maybe we might just get found out on Sunday.
Well, let's not worry about that yet. There's a lot of water to go under the bridge before we start worrying about what team we're going to have on the pitch next season. But I mean, I think it's a huge game for the manager. Huge game for the manager. He has to win it.
Yeah,
he absolutely has to win it. Otherwise, it's a nail in the coffin. I mean, we've had one of these games already, haven't we, this season when we played Stoke reserves at home and we struggled to beat them.
Scrape through.
So I've got Swansea people in my family, and so my mate said that he basically expects Swansea to rest players as well, because they're in that sort of middle of the table. So there's always the chance of the playoffs, isn't there, for quite a long time. So he doesn't think they're going to be prioritising this game. And he said much the same as us. He said we haven't got a strong 11 anyway. So it really doesn't matter who played. You mentioned a couple of players, one of which I knew about, Matt Grimes, who was Russell Martin's captain when he was the manager of Swansea. I remember
we linked with him. We must have been at some point.
We were at one stage.
Yeah.
When he was at Exeter, I think. We were heavily linked. He ended up at Swansea instead.
We battered them at home, didn't we? Was it 4-0 or 5-0? Middle of the season.
Boxing Day, wasn't it? Yeah, it's Boxing Day.
And he looked like a player who was above. He was trying to sort of like play, and the other players weren't on his level. So it just wasn't working. So I thought he was a decent player in midfield. But the one who got mentioned to me was a guy called Gonzalo Franco, who apparently is a midfield player. If he's playing, he's apparently one to watch. So, yeah, and as Steve said, their last championship game, I think they got a draw against West Brom this week.
Yeah, last-minute header from Joe Allen, rare collector's item that.
Yeah,
sorry, Joe Allen scored a header.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I mean, they got battered by Pompey, Steve said. So, but it's more about what we do than what they do, isn't it? Let's face it. And if we can't put out a team that wins this game, then I think the honeymoon period, if there was one for Mr. Urich, is well and truly going to be over.
I mean, their manager was being linked with the West Brom job recently, Alfie. So they've got a bit about them, haven't they? I mean, I know they're kind of like mid-table, and I think they've sort of lost and drawn the last couple, but they're not to be underestimated.
Yeah, they are slap bang in the middle of the table with a 0 goal difference, which is how you know they're a middling side. But the manager, Luke Williams, obviously a Russell Martin disciple. He was assistant at Swansea a couple of years ago. So I wonder who Russell Martin will be supporting on Sunday. But also, Luke Williams, like you say, was linked with West Brom. But actually, it got to the point where I think some Swansea fans were getting quite frustrated because he was sort of joking in the media, and he was being very non-committal about wanting to stay at Swansea. When he was asked about, do you want to go to West Brom and obviously replace Carlos Corberán? And I think he made a few jokes about it, which is his normal demeanour. But it got to the point where he sort of had to come out and say, no, it's fine. I'm not going for the job. But that was only after West Brom appointed their new manager or whatever they did. And then they played each other on the same weekend. So I think it was quite a sort of storied week for Swansea fans. But we know how they're going to try and play. That's what those sort of managers do. And like Glenn says, the focus just has to be on Saints. They're a better team. They need to prove it. And they have to win this game. But I mean, Steve, I thought it was funny how you said this is the one competition, or maybe it was mine, how we can do something. I mean, I'm not sure what you're expecting the Saints to do in the FA Cup this season. But
get through to the fourth round would be nice. Win a game.
Bit of prize money maybe for a couple of wins.
Yeah. Like I say, it's a chance to make that 5 goals in 4 games to make it 5 games. So let's hope that.
I just want to see my team win a game. That's what I want. I want us to win a bloody game. That would be nice. But
then it's Man United a couple of days later, isn't it? So it's just quite a quick turnaround.
Isn't it, that one?
Yeah, for Old Trafford. I mean, I'm with the team in terms of I would play a strong team and try and win whatever that strong team is. You just need to build some relationships and get some patterns of play going and something that can work.
The other thing worth mentioning is that Swansea in the midweek after the game are playing Cardiff.
Yeah.
So it's the South Wales derby, which is a massive thing for them.
Yeah. Hang on, that game's midweek.
No, it is on Sunday. I think that one.
It's the following week. Sorry, got that wrong.
Saturday
12:30. No drinking allowed. Basically.
Yeah. chasing fans in the sea and all that stuff again.
So they'll have one eye on that, you think?
Well, I think it's probably another reason for them not to put out whatever their normal first 11 is.
Somebody has just put a good comment actually whether Amo-Ameyaw might play against Swansea, and I don't think that's impossible. Last time I asked Ivan about him, he sort of said, "Well, it's kind of up to him. If he wants to play, then hopefully he'll be an option to us." And obviously he's been on the bench a couple of times. We haven't seen him come off, so maybe it is a chance to reintegrate him if he hasn't gone somewhere else already.
Can he play up front?
See the fan reaction to him, because
fans are fickle, so they'll hold him as a hero, and he'll be the saviour that's come too late, I imagine.
Well, and then he'll go off injured in the first half again.
Yeah, probably.
Well, that kind of moves us on nicely to the January transfer window, when they do finally sort of sit down to talk about this on Tuesday, Wednesday, whenever they can be asked. I kind of like to think how the discussions might go. There's been a bit of business done this week with Ronnie Edwards, obviously heading off on loan to QPR for the rest of the season. Sounds like Brereton Diaz as well might be off to Sheffield United. Yeah. What do you? They're third in the table, right? And they scored 36 goals. What do they need with him? I mean, I'm not complaining. Like, off you go.
I've seen Burnley a second. Burnley have conceded 9 goals all season.
What?
Burnley have conceded 9 goals in the league all season.
Oh my word! 26 games they've conceded 9 goals.
I've
not even seen that. That's incredible.
But they are also mind-numbingly dull to watch. They are peak Scott Parker.
Yeah, that's remarkable.
There are a lot of. I mean, but that Burnley fan base is very split in terms of whether you kind of just take the result. Result is everything, because so many of their games are so bad.
Yeah, I think I know what Alan Pace will go for. I don't think he's asked about the quality of football. That's a remarkable record.
So what are we expecting for January? I know we kind of mentioned a few things around this last week. Steve, for you, is it all about just the outgoings, really, and maybe a couple of signings for the future?
I mean, I don't know who you're going to be able to really bring in if you're looking beyond the next 6 months, really, because who's going to sign for you? Given what we've kind of got in store for the next 5 or 6 months, it's just going to be a period of misery. So nobody's going to come in who's got any sort of real ambition about themselves, I don't think, unless you're talking about someone who might be able to put themselves in the shop window on loan for maybe something a little bit better. I mean, maybe there's a big centre forward out there who is a little bit more mobile than Mr. Onuachu, and we can finally get away with do away with this bizarre sort of sarcastic hero worshipping of him. Can we just accept he's not very good now, please?
Yeah, I apologise for my part in that. I got hooked by the step overs and whatnot.
Yeah, and I mean there was a bit of that again yesterday, wasn't there? There were a couple of little moments which were basically the only moments of excitement in the whole game, really, from a Saints perspective. But when you're doing those on the halfway line, it's completely meaningless. I saw Sulemana did a little drag back and flick to pass the ball 5 yards to Carl Walker-Peters. It's like, well, I mean, what are you doing? Are you playing 5-a-side down goals or what? It's just infuriating. So I think, I mean, if you can get a shot of those two, then you, for any sort of money, then I think you're laughing, aren't you? Get just a bit of a cleaning of house, really. Do
you sell Carl Walker-Peters and claim 5, 6, 7 million?
Who's paying money for him?
Well, very true.
Nobody. His performances haven't been standout, I wouldn't say.
Let's say you did get an offer. Then you got a £5 million offer for Carl Peters. Would you take it?
Take it. We've got 4 right backs.
Yeah, and it's not going to affect the outcome of the season, is it? So,
no, because you're already down.
And we've now got 2 left backs, so it's
that's my kind of thinking. I'm on the same page as you are. I do think that just like anybody who you don't want next season or isn't going to be here next season, you can get rid of. You might as well do it and just get the money in now and save the wages. And they're going to bring in an 18-year-old French centre back called Joachim K. Sander from Valenciennes. He plays every game for the French under-19s and plays every game for the senior team in the French third division. I believe he's going to be sort of playing with them in 21s, but training with the first team. So sort of on that precipice again, and a bit like Sam Amo. It's one for the future. And Wellington's obviously officially joined now as well. And Wellington, I think he's injured at the moment.
Isn't this French kid just look at us and our clever multi-club model?
Possibly, but I mean, the Twitter tacticos who know more than I do, they do think he's genuinely quite good. He's a French youth international captain. He captains the French under-19s. He plays every week in the men's division at the age of 18, centre back. So he might be good.
Can he play up front? That's the only question I've got. I mean, the other thing, I've been asked this a couple of times about Shay Charles. Should we bring him back? And
I don't see the point of destroying him for 6 months.
Well, no, for his development, we shouldn't bring him back. We should not. We should leave him where he is. But
so if we can't bring him back,
well, we need players in the centre of midfield. Let's face it.
That is a fair point.
So if we're not going to be able to sign someone, then we probably should look at bringing him back. And someone made a very good point to me that he could be this season's Nathan Teller. Do you remember when we got relegated last time? Nathan Teller was out on loan at the Championship, and then we lost him because he suddenly fancied himself as a Premier League player when the club had just got relegated, and obviously went to Germany. Shay Charles occasionally gets linked with the likes of West Ham. And there are teams sniffing around him, so I could possibly see him going if we end up in the Championship, which would be a shame because I think he'd obviously be a very good player there next year. But there is a danger, so I think we do have to look at that. But whether preventing him going would be best served by bringing him back to play in this abysmal end of season.
I think more likely to get rid of him then, though he'll be desperate to leave, wouldn't he? He has to play with this team for 6 months. So
I'd love to know. I know you mentioned like Carl Walker-Peters, but I'd love to get into his head and think where he sees himself going.
Well, he will get. Clearly, he's still here because in 2 summer windows, proper interest in him has not materialised. I know West Ham were interested last window, but when they went down to the Championship, they didn't get an offer for him. So no club really sees him as that 15-20 million pound player. But ultimately, if you can get him on a free, there'll be a lot of clubs interested, in my opinion. In a backup right back as good as him, I think that.
Leicester was another one mentioned this. I wonder whether he might just be have his heart set on going abroad, perhaps.
I think he'll end up at Palace.
Palace always seems like a natural fit because the way they play in South London and whatnot, it always seems like a natural fit. Yeah.
A few comments about Ross Stewart. I kind of feel like it's not worth talking about him.
I just think he's injured. I should say about Wellington. I said Wellington's injured. He got a hamstring injury in October, so he's on the way back now, but he's still training away from the team. So he's not 6 months injured like Ross Stewart signing.
Yeah.
But yeah, Ross. I think Ross is still injured. To be honest, I just think he's just not going to be ready to play football for a long time.
Well, he had a break that he had a sort of setback again, didn't he? So after the Arsenal game, was it when he got injured? He was supposed to be sort of, I don't think they put a time on it, but then he gave there was an update given about him and the other guy who's injured all the time, I've forgotten, Larios, about they both picked up new injuries or recovery injuries or whatever they call them, and we're not going to see either of them this season, let's face it. So it's just grim times, and all that the new manager has mentioned, it might be lost in translation a little bit, but it seems like they're only really concerned with outgoings.
Yeah.
So it does make you slightly apprehensive about finances. And it also is going to shine a light on, you're getting rid of Brereton Diaz, who you only signed 5 months ago. It'd be interesting to see who else goes, because I read one story about Charlie Taylor maybe going. So that's the second player who you only signed 3 or 4 months ago.
Well, I think the general baseline is if you get relegated from the Premier League to the Championship, you kind of need to make 100 million revenue, or you're going to lose 100 million in revenue, and you will try and make as much of that back as possible. So I think departures are inevitable. If they can't sell Bella Kotchap, Kamaldeen, Paul Amo-Ameyaw, then it's going to be Harwood-Bellis, obviously Matty, the guys that we talked about.
Harwood-Bellis?
Well, that's exactly it. No one's going to pay 20 million quid for him. But
the one good thing about Flynn Downs having shown that he hasn't made the step up at all this season is that nobody's going to want to buy him next summer. So he'll be the key man in our midfield again next season in the Championship, and he will dominate it like he did last season.
Don't you think though that a lot of the issues we've got is that we're expecting Downs and Harwood-Bellis, for example, to step in and be the main man at Premier League level. Whereas if you go back to our team in 2016, when we were decent in this league, we had some very, very good players, some real sort of violinists, if you like, Pella, Tadic, Mane. And then we had the road sweepers like Shane Long, for example, who were good in that context of that team because they had better players around them. But as soon as those guys left and Shane Long had to be the main man, he just wasn't good enough. And I feel that with Downs and Harwood-Bellis, if they stepped into, this is Steve's point from earlier, if they stepped into a half capable team that had some very good players in it, they would probably play at a higher level. But they're not. It's unrealistic to expect players to step into their first Premier League season and dominate and be, at a level where they can bring the 9 average players along with them, sort of thing. We don't sign the marquee players anymore. We don't sign the players like we signed Virgil van Dijk, for example. We don't sign players of that sort of level anymore who could go on to be world class. If you look at that team, it's just crazy when you look at it. The players that went through it, like Toby Alderweireld, Sadio Mane, Virgil van Dijk, Graziano Pella, Dusan Tadic, Morgan Schneiderlin, Victor Wanyama, they all went through and went on to bigger clubs, and then your players who are not quite of that level, like Shane Long, Cedric Suarez, can be part of a functioning team. But we don't sign the good players anymore. We signed Aaron Ramsdale. I'll give him that. But
But Glenn, look at the Bournemouth signings every year. They're not the marquee signings. They shop in the Championship pretty often. They bring in 21-year-olds from Juventus, Dean Hulson, who's just unbelievable. I mean, he's 6'5", he play like a striker, so he is going to be good at centre back. But they shop in the Championship. They bring in the 15 to 25 million pound Moneyball players, and they've made it work. And to be fair, Brentford do similar. I know they spent a bit more with the Tony money and whatnot. So teams can do it, but I just wonder, we've said before on the pod, like, is it a point now where you just sort of hope that you yo-yo until you have one lucky window where you strike 3 or 4 correct, and then you stay up and then you push on? But that is a dangerous game to play.
But we are relying on
at least one established Premier League team having a shocker like the 3 of us did 2 years ago.
Yeah. I feel better for getting some of that off my chest, I've got to be honest. And I hope you do as well. Don't forget, you can follow Total Saints Podcast on all the social media platforms. There might be a few bits going on this week with transfers, so we'll try and keep on top of that as well. At Total Saints Pod is what you're looking for. As I mentioned earlier, you'll also find us on Patreon. That's where you can support the podcast with your monthly contributions. You just have to visit patreon.com/Total Saints Podcast. Each of those tiers comes with different perks. There's some weekly shouts at the end of the pod for patrons in our Francis Benali and our Mick Shannon tier. So to that end, thank you to Dave Melton, Andy Hollis, Anthony Thompson, Gavin Ford, James Harron, Nicky Nicholson, Southampton NY, Drew Dyatt and James Kibbe. They're all in our Francis Benali tier. And in the Mick Shannon tier, we've got Colt Baker, Dave Ernsberger, Ed Busy, Nick Higston, Phil Cook, Nick Reed, Paul Stewart, Phil Horstrup, Matt Hall, Mark Littlewood, Mike Etheridge, James Bobin, John Bevan and Liam Dempsey as well. Massive thank you to Paul Castle Associates and Steamtown Brewery for supporting TSP. Thank you to Steve, Glenn and Alfie. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next time.